Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And the reason you see that screen up there is I wanted to share something with you. Last couple of days, I think it was over the weekend possibly, Chris Lito and I did a part 1 and part 2 of the UFO hearings breakdown. And part 1 is on his YouTube channel, which is called The Lito Files, and part 2 is on mine. And check those videos out. If it's on the YouTube channel only, on his YouTube channel, it's not as a podcast. But anyway, we have a lot of fun. Chris is always a great guy to talk to, especially about these type of things. So check that out when you get a chance. The guest for the evening is Dan Harary. And he had a UFO sighting when he was young, got him interested in the topic. And his father, who was in the military, remained rather mysterious about what his thoughts were. And possibly there was some type of inside connection that he may have had in the military. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And he also has a sci-fi book out after they came, I believe it's along the title of that, along that lines. And it's basically based on a person down on his luck deciding to end it all, being abducted more or less. And then, it's changing mankind. It's something like that. I didn't get a chance to even breeze through the book, so I'm not really sure. But I do want to talk to him mostly about his UFO sightings, and then we'll get into the book later on. So our blog this week is it's actually part 2 from last week, Letters from Island Principals in the Merseyside UFO Bulletin Part 2. Another one by the great Charles Lear. Those are made. I'm a little bit backed up in the audio blogs, but we put those up in audio blogs. So I want to thank you all for participating, watching tonight. We do have chat. If you have a question for our guest, please put it in all caps. And I am ready to bring him in. Dan, welcome to the show, Dan.
Thank you, Martin. Very nice to be here. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yes, and you showed up at the very last second. Wow. I mean, literally 15 seconds.
I'm very punctual. I actually got that from my father. May he rest in peace.
To show up right at the last second? Something about it, huh?
My dad could show up on any door, anywhere on the planet Earth, within 10 seconds of what time he said he was going to be there. He just had a knack for that.
Well, that was close, but thank you so much for joining us. And that's quite a background you have. I see those electric drums and all kinds of things going on. You were a publicist for many years. You were into the music scene, right?
Sure, I can give you a little background if you'd like. So my name is Dan Harary. I've been a Hollywood publicist, Martin, for 40 years, believe it or not.
Wow. Yeah.
40 years. In January, it'll be 40 years. The pictures you see on my walls behind me are pictures of me with very famous people from the last 40 years. And all of them appear in my first book. My first book actually came out last year. I became an author last year. My first book is called Flirting with Fame. A Hollywood publicist recounts 50 years of celebrity close encounters.
Huh.
And the reason I put 50 years is, so I've been in Hollywood for 40 years, but when I was in high school in the early 70s, and I had very long hair, and I was a drummer, you can see my electronic drums behind me here. I worked for a concert hall, and I grew up in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And who's from Asbury Park that's famous now? Bruce Springsteen. So believe it or not, in 1973, when I was 16, I worked with Bruce Springsteen, and right when he was forming the E Street Band. And he, my best friend and I did his stage crew and his lighting for a couple of shows in Asbury Park. And so I knew Bruce Springsteen, 2 years before Born to Run. So 2 years before anyone else ever heard of him. So that's the pictures on the wall. It's me with Spielberg, Jerry Seinfeld, Mel Brooks, Steve Allen, Sid Caesar, Stallone, Tom Hanks, lots of famous people I've met over the years. But I am a Hollywood.
Yeah, I saw the one with.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You had with Spielberg, which is pretty interesting. You never got to play the drums. Here's a picture of you on the drum set years ago. You never played drums with Bruce, did you?
I'll tell you an unbelievable story. You won't believe it, but this is a true story. Okay, so I worked with Bruce in '73 when I was a junior. A year later, in '74, my senior year of high school, I'm 17. A very good friend of mine was in gym class with me. We were in gym class together playing handball, I remember. And he goes, "Hey, Danny, Bruce Springsteen is auditioning drummers for his band." Because this friend of mine was friends with Bruce Springsteen, like actual friends with Bruce. And he goes, "He's auditioning drummers. What do you think about trying out?" And Martin and I said, "Man, I'm into Led Zeppelin and Cream and The Who. I'm not into Bruce's music, so I'm going to pass. I'm going to pass. I passed. Didn't even occur to me to audition." So
yeah,
that says it all, man. It says it all.
That's like the people that rejected the Beatles,
Decca Records rejected the Beatles. Yep.
Yeah. Pretty funny. Well, okay. I would like to hear about you had a few sightings, and I love people to tell their stories about sightings. And
Sure.
You were with your dad with one in particular, and I want to also talk about what your thoughts were about your dad and what he may or may not have known behind the scenes.
Absolutely great. I really appreciate the question. So again, I grew up just near Asbury Park, New Jersey, the Jersey Shore. My dad and my mom were both from Brooklyn, and they got married in 1952. They moved to Asbury Park, and then a few years later, they moved to what's called West Deal, which is adjacent to Asbury Park. But my dad was an electronics engineer for the U.S. Army. He worked at Fort Monmouth, which was an Army base. And he worked there from 1951 until 1996, for 45 years till he retired. And my dad designed and helped invent different missile systems and drones and radar systems. He once told me that he was in on the very earliest days of the U.S. military designing drones. Okay, so let's keep that part in mind. Okay, so now here we go. March 1970, the Jersey Shore. I'm done with school. I think it was Hebrew school. I believe it or not. I'm pretty sure it was Hebrew school. My dad picked me up from Hebrew school. It was about 4:00 on I think it was a Sunday afternoon, and it was daylight out still. So I'm in my dad's car, 1970. I'm 14. We're driving home on a suburban street in New Jersey, and I saw through the windshield of my father's car, right above my father's car, an enormous silver letter V like Victor craft just hovering just right over my father's car, going incredibly slowly, maybe 200-300 feet in the air. No noise, no sound of any kind, no exhaust, no propellers, nothing, just a V, just the letter V like this. So I saw it through the windshield, so I go, "Dad, look, there's a UFO, Dad, stop the car, UFO, stop the car. So my dad stopped the car. He and I got out. We walked around to the front of the car. We both looked straight up, Martin, literally above our heads. And I was going, Dad, look, this is so cool. This is so cool. I'm going to tell all my friends. This is so great. Isn't this great? Isn't this great, Dad? Isn't this great? And Martin, he looked at it like he was looking at a head of lettuce in the supermarket. No expression on his face whatsoever. Nothing whatsoever. No interest, no fear, no joy, excitement. No things were on his face at all. So he just looked at it like da 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 da, and then he looked down at me. He winked at me. That was very cool. He winked at me and said, "Come on, kid, let's go home." We went home. I called the local newspaper. I remember the phone call. It was on a rotary phone. This is 1970.
Oh yeah.
We didn't have buttons yet. And the lady said, she goes, "Young man, I can't talk to you now. I'm getting hundreds of phone calls about this sighting. I can't talk to you right now. Keep your eyes out open in the paper," right? So every day that week, Martin, I checked the paper, Asbury Park Press. Nothing, no story, nothing. Now, the big picture about that sighting is the following. I completely and totally forgot that event happened for 47 years. Until my dad passed away. My dad passed away in April 2017 in Florida. I was a couple of days after his death. went to a deli in West. There's my dad. I'm 1 year old in that picture. That's probably my favorite picture. That's 1957. You see my dad with his pens and his pencils in his pocket.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay. I never in my life saw him without pens and pencils in his pocket. Even on weekends and holidays. My dad was the prototypical science nerd. He always had pens and pencils, always. So anyway, 2017, my dad passed. I'm very sad. I went to get a pastrami sandwich at a deli. I ordered the sandwich. I'm sitting there waiting at the table, and I swear to you, this is true. I'm just sitting there thinking about my dad. And something from heaven or God or my dad is an angel or something from the universe just came through the window of the deli into my brain, like sort of like a little beam of light. And I played for me in my brain the 1970 sighting I had with my father. I saw it as a movie. I forgot, Martin, I forgot about it for 47 years.
I've heard of that. I've heard of people saying that, not getting it back like you, but I've heard of people saying that they totally forgot about a UFO sighting until something triggered it. And then they remembered all the details.
It's exactly right. And I kind of think maybe, because I believe my dad's in heaven, that maybe my dad sent me this memory. I'm telling you the truth, honestly. Some people don't believe me, but it's absolutely true, because I forgot about it. And I saw, like a movie, that we pulled over the car, we got out, I'm jumping up and down, I saw the craft, I saw my dad's face, and then I remembered my dad winked at me. Now, this is 2017, and as I'm waiting for my pastrami sandwich, Martin, I'm like, wow, my dad must have known what that was, right? Mm-hmm. My dad worked for the Army at a military base. He was a GS-13, which is a very high level for a civilian. He was not in military. He was a civilian engineer, but very high level. I know he had top secret clearance because he used to tell me and my mother, I can't ever tell you guys anything about my job. You know that, right? He looked at it with no surprise at all, and he winked at me. So as I'm waiting for the sandwich, I realized for the first time in my life that my dad must have known what that craft was. I truly believe that. Now we come to the part about my mother. My mother is 88. She's still alive. So after I had the memory come back, I called my mother. I said, Mom, did Dad ever talk about UFOs? She said, no, but when he started at this job at Fort Monmouth, they took him deep into the vaults there. They showed him something top secret. She said he came home that night, white, pale, and shaky. And she said to him, honey, what's wrong? And he said, I saw something today. It's top secret, and I can never tell you about it ever. And he never did. My mother thinks he saw something futuristic. She doesn't think he saw an alien. I think he may have seen some recovered alien technology. This is my theory. Mm-hmm. And when I told my mother about the Silver V, just the other day, I was describing it to her. She goes, your father invented drones that were very futuristic looking and spied on our enemies. So Martin, I think the V that I saw with my father, I'm not saying he designed or built that particular one, but I believe, because it was so close to the military base, I think it was a drone that my dad was involved with in some way. He looked at it as though he were familiar with it. And I think perhaps he had something to do with the technology of that craft. So I believe that UFO in 70 was a man-made military craft.
Huh. How about that? You said from what you could recall, of course, this is after so many years, that it didn't make any noise. You remember it didn't make any noise. It was moving very slowly. You didn't see any propulsion, visible propulsion. How would you think that this thing would be at all or anything? I mean, I know you can't. I mean, they don't have any drones like that now that I'm aware of. Maybe they do, but it seems like if that was a drone developed back then that could float or hover or whatever, it seems like it would be in use by now.
Well, it could be. It well could be. I mean, the bigger question, Martin, I guess, is, there are so many UFO and UAP sightings around the world. You know this better than me. Every year, right? Every country around the world. Not everything is not everything we see up there is alien. I believe at least a third is. But, this craft, based on my dad's I'm just going based on my dad's reaction, what my dad did his whole life for work, the fact that I know, because I saw the movie in my head, and like as clear as I'm looking at you right now, it played in my head exactly the colors, the day, the sunlight, the clouds, everything. It was just hovering. It just was floating. It wasn't zoomed, it was just very leisurely, and then it just went over my whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
Now this is interesting. A few weeks ago, there was an article about me and the sighting in the Daily Mail newspaper in England, which is online.
Mm-hmm.
And I got an email from someone from New Jersey. This is a couple of weeks ago, and he said, Dan, I read about you and your father's sighting in 1970. He said, my 3 older siblings saw the exact same craft in March 1970. We were 1 or 2 towns over from where you lived with your father. There it is. He said, my siblings were a couple of towns over. They saw the same exact thing, and their whole lives they've been waiting for verification. They said, thanks for that article, because now they know that they weren't crazy. So
wow.
I was not the only person that saw that. Other people in the world saw that.
Yeah, that's validation for yourself as well. So
yeah. So I know that happened because I remember it very, very vividly.
Yeah.
And again, after my dad passed away for the first time ever, the scene came to me, his reaction came to me, and I put 2 and 2 together based on my dad's career. And I know he was very heavily into the development of drones from the 50s on. He was early part of developing drones. So perhaps, look, I don't think that was an alien craft. It could have been. I think if it was alien, I think my dad would have shown like some sort of surprise or something. But I'm telling you, man, he looked at it like he was looking at his car getting gassed up at the gas station. So
could that have been tested that nearby you? I mean, did he work at a military base?
Yes. Yeah. Mm. So he worked at Fort Monmouth military base.
Oh, yes. You said that. I'm sorry. Yes.
And in fact, my neighborhood was right next to a huge open field. And I remember I think they called the field the something testing grounds, or it was just a huge open field, many acres of land. They never did anything with it when I was a child back there. And they called it the testing grounds. I don't know. Maybe they launched it from that. Wherever it came from, I truly believe it came from very close, nearby my house.
Now, you say like the letter V. Did it have like a structure just say, did it look just like a bold letter V in the sky? Was it connected? It wasn't like a triangle. It had like a V, and then it goes off into 2 arms.
Right, exactly. Literally giant silver letter V. No, it was not a close triangle. I do remember there was a light on each of the 3 points.
That's what I was going to ask you, because there's a lot of the sightings, they say there's a light on each point. And I'm just going to, let's see, there's a craft. A lot of people said like the Phoenix lights. I don't know if you've looked into other, sightings, but like the Phoenix light. Oh yes, of course, because you were involved in MUFON and all kinds of things. So I forgot about all that. You have a background in basically looking into the UFO world.
Since 2007 is when I became I'd say a UFO enthusiast. Was 2007. The Phoenix lights, I believe that craft, if it was one craft, I believe it was many times larger than the one I saw.
Was it something like, here's a picture, was it something along the lines, except, with the lights at all extremities instead of the center ones too?
Okay, so the same shape, yes. The one I saw again was silver, shiny silver, shiny silver. One light on the tip and the end tip and the end tip. Now the one you're showing me here looks like it's pointing up to go straight up. The one I saw, Martin, was flat. It was flying horizontally, completely horizontally.
Now,
but the same shape, the same exact, the same shape you're showing me. That's what I saw.
Yeah. And this was a daylight sighting, but you saw the lights were on?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Well, that's interesting. And you had 2 more sightings. Would you like to talk about?
Sure. And again, and then we'll get to the book, because when I got that beam from my angel father, let's say, and saw the movie in my head, I got the whole premise to write my book. And we'll get to that after I tell you about the other thing. But my book was born while I was waiting for that pastrami sandwich, because right after I saw the movie, I got a pen and I started jotting down notes on the placemat at the deli about writing this particular book. So this book was given birth unto me, like it was a spirit, something. You know, Paul McCartney once said he dreamed the song yesterday. He dreamed the song yesterday. He woke up and he played it on the piano because he got it from a dream. And he's always said that he dreamed that song. I was given this memory as a gift. I'm telling you, it was a gift to relive this memory with my dad. It was a gift from above, and then it triggered the birth of my book. Okay, anyway, so that was 1970, the first sighting. And again, I completely and totally forgot about it. I was a drummer then in 8th grade. I was in rock bands. My bands played at parties and dances and bar mitzvahs and all those things. And my friends and I were chasing little girls around. So when I'm 14 and on, you know, I wasn't really thinking about aliens and UFOs. I was thinking about rock and roll and girls in miniskirts. I mean, that's what I was doing. So that's why the memory just didn't stick, because my dad never talked about it. Nothing ran in the newspaper. And I was playing Beatles songs at 8th grade dances. So that's part of why I forgot that. All right, now we jump to 1996. I always do that wrong. 1996. I moved out to LA from the East Coast in 1980 when I was 24, and I got into the entertainment industry. I got married. I had 2 kids. I got divorced. And then my ex-wife and my 2 kids, when they were small, moved from LA proper to Lancaster, California. Lancaster is the high desert. And it's actually, my ex-wife lived not far from Edwards Air Force Base. So in 1996, my son was 8. I used to visit my children every single weekend after my divorce when they were small.
That's great.
My son was 8. I bought him a telescope for his birthday. I brought it out to Lancaster. That night of his birthday, we're looking up in the sky through the telescope, and we saw Saturn and Mars and the moon and all these wonderful things. And then, as I was going to put him to bed, I noticed in the far right corner of the sky an egg-shaped object that was very bright, egg-shaped object, very bright, sort of off yellow, off white color. And it was in the far right of the sky, and it went in a straight line all the way across the entirety of the sky as far as I could see, in a straight line. Here's my hand. Straight line all the way across. Okay, Then it stopped in place. Which hand is this? Stopped in place for about 20, 30 seconds. And then it went all the way back the same route that it came from. I can't do that with my hands. But so it appeared, went all the way across the sky, stopped for 30 seconds, and then went all the way back the same way it came from. And I told my son, the first path, I said, Jordan, there's a satellite. We're seeing a satellite. It had to be. But after it stopped and reversed course, then I thought, wow, this isn't a satellite or an asteroid or a meteor. This must be something remarkable. I don't think it's man-made, and I don't think it's from nature. I think this was an alien craft.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it sure narrows it down that it can't be, you know, something of ours that we know of. You know, when it does that, especially, it sounds like this was very high altitude, right?
It was very high. Now, recently, you know who Jimmy Church is? I'm sure you know Jimmy Church.
Yeah.
I did an interview with Jimmy Church about a month ago. Told him that story. And he said, Dan, he goes, Edwards Air Force Base is right there, and they test military craft all the time. And I said, well, I think you're right. I think it was from Edwards. It would look like, Martin, the way it flew, because it flew, stopped, and reversed. It looked like it was being tested. It could have been man-made craft with extraterrestrial technology. That's what I think. I think it was a man-made craft using extraterrestrial technology. But the way it flew very quickly, stopped, and reversed course, I couldn't imagine any other object, plane or helicopter or missile. Nothing else I could think of that could possibly do that.
Yep, that's pretty interesting. I had, I've had my one sighting, and then I'm very careful about everything to even talk about. But I have had a couple things that were mysterious, and it's kind of funny. I end every show with "Keep your eyes to the sky." Well, I practice what I preach. I'm always looking up in the sky, no matter if I'm driving. Like, of course not while I'm driving, but I mean, I have what is it called, a panoramic roof in my car, and but I'm always watching for things. And before I had my UFO sighting, I would glance or whatever, but I wasn't always looking to the sky. So when you are paying attention, you see a lot more. But I've seen some things, and I'm thinking everything that I've seen is most likely explainable, but I don't know. One of them was pretty interesting, but I still am hesitant to say, hey, everybody, I saw another UFO, and maybe it wasn't identified to me, but it probably was something explainable. That's how I feel.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. I think the younger generation today, they're looking down. Why? Because they're looking at their phones.
Their phones. Yeah.
I mean, you and I think I'm older than you, but I think our era, we were more outdoorsy, and we played outdoors when we were kids. And, we take a hike and you look at the sky. My daughter's 33, God bless her. She lives on her phone. So,
Yeah.
I say, you should maybe look up every once in a while, maybe look up a little bit.
Yeah. I was a doctor's waiting room recently. Oh, I don't know, a few weeks ago. And I was looking, it was all people my age and older, and every single one of them was staring at their phone. So it's not just young people. It's like anyone that has a phone. They are like, you get all the information in the world. It's right there in your hand, and it's hard to break away. There's probably people watching YouTube right now, watching us on their phone. I mean, it's yeah.
It's like crack. Yeah, phones are like crack.
They are. Yeah.
I'll be honest. If I misplace my phone, I panic. I'll panic.
I know. It's our connection, our leash to the world. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I did the 70. I did 96. Now we come to the year 2007. I was in a bookstore in LA, waiting for a friend to go see a movie. And I just was walking around this bookstore to kill time, and I saw the paranormal books aisle. And for whatever reason, my entire life up till that point, I never saw a paranormal books aisle before. And there were hundreds of books: UFOs, aliens, outer space, Bigfoot, ghosts, poltergeists, spirits, witches, all these, all off the wall things, but they were all fascinating topics. And I just had never seen them before. So I just was like, well, I'm going to get this and this, the history of Bigfoot, the history of ufology, Richard Dolan's book about disclosure. I bought a huge pile of books. I bought 12 books that day. Went home, I read them all. And I'm like, okay, I'm a fairly intelligent person. I'm pretty, I'm well educated. I know nothing about any of this paranormal. I know no things. Zero information, and there's a whole world here in front of me. So in 07, I joined MUFON LA, same year, 07. My very first, and they have meetings every month. And Martin, the very first meeting I went to, I was blessed because Giorgio Tsoukalos from Ancient Aliens?
Yep.
Everyone knows Giorgio with the crazy black hair.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He gave a lecture at my very first MUFON meeting about ancient alien theory that he is a proponent of, that Eric von Daniken essentially crafted in 1968 in Chariots of the Gods. And he gave an hour and a half lecture with slides and videos and still pictures of cave drawings, aliens and UFOs and cave drawings and petroglyphs carved in stone by American Indians, and UFOs in Renaissance paintings. And then, of course, the pyramids in Egypt, the structures in Central and South America, Stonehenge, Roswell. It just in an hour and a half, it was essentially the history of biblical references. Ezekiel saw the wheel within the wheel when he was sleeping, and he did like ufology's greatest hits in 90 minutes. And I'm telling you, Martin, I was at the edge of my seat and I was crying. I was like, I had tears. I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest information I've ever heard in my life. This was like going to a master class of life all at once. So at the end of the lecture, I went up to Giorgio. I shook his hand. I hugged him. I said, Giorgio, you just changed my outlook on my entire life. And it did. It really did. Since then, I've been studying and reading and going to meetings and meeting people. I've read hundreds of books. I've seen dozens of documentaries. I've been a member of MUFON ever since then. And it just opened my eyes. That brings us to my third sighting. So a year later, 2008, at a MUFON meeting, was James Gilliland. Do you know who James is?
I've heard the name. He does the ECETI thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so James Gilliland did a lecture, MUFON LA 2008. He owns ECETI Ranch in Washington State at the base of Mount Adams, and it's a world-famous UFO hotspot for sightings. It's been a hotspot for sightings apparently for hundreds of years. The American Indians who used to live there called Mount Adams the mountain of shining light because they used to see lights coming and going from Mount Adams. So he gave a lecture about his ranch, and he said, this is 4th of July weekend. I'm doing a 3-day open house UFO seminars during the day, and we're going to look at the skies at night. So I was with a girlfriend at the time named Barbara, and I said, Barbara, can we please go do this together? She goes, oh, okay, you and your UFOs, okay. So we spent 3 days at James Gilliland's ranch, 4th of July, 2008. And during the days, it was people like William Henry and Nick Pope and documentary films and slideshows and biblical references and the pyramids and orbs and all these wonderful things. And at night, they would build a bonfire and people would dance around the bonfire, play guitars and tambourines and chant and sing. And it was very lovely outdoors at night and huge open sky, crystal clear. You could see every star perfectly. So the first night, I think it was a Friday night, and we're all out there for hours and hours. And when you're looking out for hours, your neck kind of gets a little bit tired, Martin, after a while. So the first night, Friday night, we're looking, nothing. The next day, Saturday, more lectures, more films. We're looking up Saturday night, looking at the sky, hours and hours, absolutely nothing. The third day, Sunday, lectures, films. Sunday night, we're looking up again, nothing. And I said to my girlfriend, I said, you know what, why don't we leave early? We could beat the traffic because there were probably 300 people there. And no sooner did I say that, Martin, than out of absolutely nowhere, a fairly medium-sized object, it looked like a black teardrop, it just appeared directly above our heads. So let's say 200, 300 people and a couple hundred feet, black teardrop directly over our heads. I remember it cut off the moonlight. So it was fairly large. And then on the underneath part of the craft was a brilliant emerald green light that turned on and off like this above us several times.
Wow.
Like, hello, how are you? We're here. We know you've been waiting for us. We hope you have a nice evening. We love you. Everything's cool. We just thought, we're in the neighborhood. We thought we'd say hello, right? So flashing on and off. Brilliant emerald green, like the green from the Emerald City in the Wizard of Oz movie, that color. And then the light turned off, and the craft It shot away, just vanished.
Wow.
Didn't slowly. It took off, and I cried. I cried. People were crying. People were hugging and kissing. And I'm telling you, man, that was not man-made.
How many people would you say that witnessed that?
At least 200, 250 people, at least.
Wow.
And it was a group sighting. And like I said, seriously, people were crying. I cried. I was touched. I can still feel it right here in my heart. It was a warm, profound message, communication, interaction. And I'm telling you, man, that thing was not invented by my father or the military. This was something warm and wonderful and life and living. This was not a military craft. I know it in my heart. This was them. So by third UFO, I can honestly tell you, with from the bottom of my heart, I believe that was extraterrestrial craft.
It's always curious, and I had Brandon Fugel on last week from the Skinwalker Ranch. It's always curious why they're hotspots, and the different theories of why that is so. So this is right at the base of Mount Adams. I'm wondering geologically if there's anything interesting about that area or the mountain itself.
Well, Kenneth Arnold's sighting, June 47, was I think it was at Mount Shasta. I think it was.
It was in the not the Cascades, in the or wait a minute, where was that? No, that wasn't Mount Shasta. That was up in Washington, wasn't it?
Yeah. All right. So Kenneth Arnold's sighting was at a mountain, and Mount Adams is part of the same range. It's part of the same mountain range.
Yeah.
So there you have two. I saw something. The Indians called it the Mountain of Shining Light. Kenneth Arnold saw something. I forget which mountain, but it's the same range in Washington State.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So look, if you want to believe there's a base there inside one or more of the mountains, if there's a base there, I would believe that. I would absolutely believe that. Why would the Indians call that the Mountain of Shining Light? Think about it, really. Why would they have done that?
Yeah. I spent a lot of time around Mount Shasta, and that whole area that has this, it's like a mysterious area. I don't know how to describe it. I felt that way in two different places in the country that I visited. And at that time, I was not really into the UFO topic or anything when I was there. And I'd go there a number of times a year. And then I was at Four Corners, and that area felt really, there's like a weird feeling in both areas. And somewhere in New Mexico was another time in the late 70s. And I do think you and I are about the same age. So I was out there, but there are those places that you do like, at least I do. I get like this weird feeling. Shasta was one of those places, and I understand there's a lot of some type of activity going on there. There's a lot of people reporting, seeing things in that area.
I think there was an episode of Ancient Aliens, I believe, that they did a look at Mount Shasta. I think you're right. You should go to the ECETI Ranch, Martin. You should, go for a weekend. You'll see. I'm pretty sure you'll see something, man.
Well, that would be fascinating. By the way, speaking of going somewhere, I do believe at this point that I will be going to Contact in the Desert. That's coming up on the very first weekend, I believe, in June. So if anyone plans on going there, look me up. You can always email me at martin@podcastufo, and maybe we'll do some type of audience and interview some people and have a little live audience or something somewhere. So anyway, I'll stay in touch on that. But anyway, so this brings us to the point of your book, and
right.
And how long did it take you to write it? And what, basically you said kind of the genesis of the book was in that cafe that you spoke about. How did all that fall together all of a sudden like that?
It was a gift. My book was a gift. And here it is, actually. Here, Nick, by the way, Nick, if you can see this, Nick Pope signed this copy of it for me.
Oh, yeah.
He gave me this quote. It's on the cover. It says, "A delightful tale of wonder and hope," Nick Pope. So Nick Pope is my new friend. I met him recently.
Yeah.
Nice
Yeah.
guy. So, okay, so my dad passed 2017. I had the memory, the vision of the V craft, and I got a pen at this deli, and I wrote down on the paper. I wrote down, write a book. I put lead character discovers his late father worked on UFOs. I wrote that sentence down, and then I wrote capital A, capital T, capital C, those letters, and I didn't know what they were, Martin. I'm like ATC. I'm like, okay, God, what is that? What does that mean? And I looked at it for a few minutes, and I'm like, they came. Like I had aliens. They came. They came. After they came. Okay, after they came. And that was it. That was my title of my book. So I got my pastrami sandwich. I ate it, really inhaled it. I came home, and the next 8 months, 12, 15 hours a day for the next 8 months, I wrote the hell out of this book. And that's how the book was born. It was inspired unto me. The storyline of the book is the following. I imagined a lead character who was down on his luck, hated his life. His company went bankrupt. His children don't speak to him. He's divorced. He's unlucky in love. He just hates his life. And on his 70th birthday, he decides to commit suicide because he just wants to be dead. He hates his life. So the first scene in the whole book is this guy. He drives out to Malibu. He takes a big bottle of vodka, a big bottle of sleeping pills. He drinks all the vodka, takes all the sleeping pills, takes off his clothes, goes out into the Pacific Ocean, swims out to sea, and all he wants to do is drown. All he wants to do is drown. As he's drowning, an enormous UFO craft comes up from the Pacific Ocean, comes out of the Pacific Ocean directly above him, beams him on board, so saves his life. And then this is a huge diamond-shaped, brilliant, multicolored craft, enormous. And it slowly hovers from Malibu all the way across Los Angeles, ending up at Dodger Stadium. And it goes to Dodger Stadium where it hovers for a while. While it's hovering there, the police, the fire engines, ambulances, media, military vehicles, cameras, microphones, all these people and technologies, they're all coming to the Dodger Stadium to record and witness this event. Clearly, aliens have arrived on Earth, and they're here now. There's no mistake, because this is not a man-made craft, obviously. So all these people show up at Dodger Stadium. The craft opens up. Two beautiful, tall, white, Nordic aliens, 7 feet tall, long white hair, pale skin, blue eyes, shimmering silvery robes. They slowly descend onto the infield, and they say, people of Earth, don't be alarmed, don't be afraid. We're here to help you. We love mankind. We've been here for tens of thousands of years. We helped create your civilization. We love you. And we felt now would be a good time for us to reveal ourselves so we can help you solve the problems that you have on Earth that you've been unable to solve all this time. Then they beam down this guy that they just saved, this naked guy. He's flopping around like a fish in this beam of light. And they say, we have a relationship with this man. Be kind to him, respect him. If you have problems, bring them to him. He will be our conduit to mankind. We will only work through him. This man is special to us. They lower the guy onto second base. The aliens get on the craft takes off. And now this guy, this naked guy, 70 years old on his birthday, is naked on second base at Dodger Stadium. And all the military and police and media, they're all hovering over him. And he looks up, and he has no idea what's happening. Isn't the slightest clue. That's the first few scenes of the story. From there, they take him to the White House. He meets the president. And in my book, I based the president on a African-American woman in her 70s, and I based her, Martin, on Oprah Winfrey. Because when I first wrote this draft of the book, there was a rumor that Oprah was going to think about running for president.
I remember that. Yeah.
So this guy, his name is Jonathan Tuckerman. So Jonathan Tuckerman, they bring him to the president, who's sort of Oprah Winfrey. And she goes, Mr. Tuckerman, who the hell are you? You know, you were just you were just presented to the world on global live TV by these beautiful, incredible aliens in a spaceship. Who are you? And he goes, Madam President, I don't have the slightest idea what's happening. He goes, all I do try to kill myself. All I wanted to be was dead right now. And instead, I'm here with you, and I just was saved by aliens. He goes, I have the slightest idea what's happening. Not the slightest clue. So anyway, the president sets this guy up at the UN. She gives him an office at the UN. He becomes the world's first interstellar ambassador. And he's reunited with his children. He develops this team of people at the UN. And the aliens visit this guy once a month. They hover over the UN once a month for the next year. And each of the months of the next year, they say to him, Mr. Tuckerman, what to your people on Earth, what would they like us to do? Well, the first time he meets with them, he said, can you guys get rid of nuclear weapons? He goes, that would be a good one. Let's do that. It's a good start. Let's get rid of every nuclear weapon and every biological weapon on the Earth, if I have a wish. And they say, okay, we can do that. That's no problem. And over the course of the next week, the alien craft goes all over the world, and it essentially melts all these weapons, every country, America, Russia, China, Israel, all countries are equally neutral. And at the end of that time, the New York Times has a huge banner that says no nukes. The biggest banner in the history of the New York Times. It says no nukes. Front cover. Remember no nukes from the.
Oh yes, they do. Sure. Yeah.
You and I are the same age, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first month. So after the first month, people are coming to this guy, Mr. Tuckerman. Yeah, thank you. You got rid of nuclear weapons. This is incredible. The president's happy. The military of the U.S. is not happy. But
yeah.
Regular people are happy. Then the next month, he says, you know what? There are still people around the world that are starving. There are people in Africa and parts of the Middle East and parts of Asia that are starving. There's no reason for anyone in Mexico. There are people that are starving on this planet in this state. They go, don't worry about it. They go, have you ever heard of manna from heaven? Now, manna from heaven is in the Jewish Bible during the story of Moses in the Exodus. And so the character says to the aliens, you guys did manna from heaven? And they go, yeah. And then they go, who do you think parted the Red Sea? You think Moses parted the Red Sea? No, it was our people. He goes, you people parted the Red Sea for Moses? So then they provide manna from heaven for people around the world who are starving. And every month, something major. They provide clean water around the world. They provide a device that offers free energy, so we don't need gas or oil or nuclear power anymore. They eliminate the emotion of anger from human beings, and in so doing, have human beings turn in their guns. Human beings no longer are angry or have hatred, so they turn in their guns, and all over the world, they bury mountains of guns, so guns are eliminated. They reverse climate change. They go around the planet and they fix the ozone layer, and they stop the melting of the polar ice caps. So every month for a year, this guy suggests to the aliens a major problem on Earth. And essentially, it's like the show I Dream a Genie with Larry Hagman and Barbara.
Oh, yeah.
They're like genies. And they go, okay, your wish is my...
Yeah.
And so a year later, Martin, so this guy on day one is drowning. Day one, he's drowning. 1 year later, exactly, he wins the Nobel Peace Prize. He's the most famous man in the world. He's friends with aliens. They call him the hero of Earth. And his best friend is the President of the United States. He falls in love with this woman, beautiful woman, who is his doctor, who he met the night he was abducted. And he fell in love with her. So a year later, his life is completely the opposite of what it was on page one. That's the first third of the book. The tribute part to my dad is in the second part of the book. And for the first year, people kept saying, Mr. Tuckerman, what you're doing with the aliens, this is great. This is fantastic. It's the greatest. It's a new age for mankind. But why did they pick you? There's 8 billion people in the world. Why did they pick you? And he goes, I don't have the slightest idea. So they keep asking him, don't you think it's time you ask them? Why you? So in the second third of the book, he goes to them. He goes, excuse me, thanks for everything you've done for me. You've changed my life in every positive way. Why did you pick? But why me? Why me? And it turns out that the aliens were friends with his parents 70 years earlier. And it turns out that his father, his late father, was a UFO researcher and a scientist working for the military. And his father had an interaction with a little baby alien and saved a little baby alien's life 70 years earlier. Something that the lead character didn't know, never knew. So these aliens are paying back to this guy a gift that his parents did for them 70 years earlier. And
Wow.
that's how and then I bring my dad in. I have my dad as though he were part of Project Blue Book. And I explain what Project Blue Book was. And I talk about the dad character in this book is essentially my father. So that's a tribute to my father.
Well, I hate to say this, but we only have a minute to wrap it up.
Okay. So please,
yeah.
Here's my book. It's been very well received. It's on Amazon, Kindle and print. After they came, Dan Harary. And if you want to reach me, I am Dan Harary. Author.com is my website. DanHararyAuthor.com. Love to talk to anybody. I'm fascinated by all things aliens and UFOs, and I love people like Martin who have given me a platform to talk about this. And love to hear from anybody who has any thoughts,
Well, it's the thought of behind your book is really interesting and would be wonderful if it could happen, and I think we a lot of times people kind of wish, okay, save us, please save us. I think that's the way a lot of people have that attitude that we have to try out how to save ourselves. But anyway, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, Dan.
It was great. It was so much fun. Thank you, Martin. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
You bet. Take care.
Bye.
All right, everyone. So we'll be back next week with Heidi Gadd. And I think that's about it. I can't think. There was something I was going to announce. Don't forget to check out the YouTube videos on the channel here with Chris Lito and myself. And thank you, everyone. And keep your eyes to the sky.